All right, guys, so we're reverse engineering our profits. So the first step that you should have taken is set your personal monthly expense budget. Okay, so you have that template, download it, work through it, make sure that you know what you need to be making in order to cover your personal expenses every month. I don't have a savings on there, and I did that for a reason. I want to talk about that in this video, a completely separate video, because I think it's important that we put a lot of emphasis on what you're putting aside. Okay, so when we talk about savings in this step right here, I'm talking about your personal savings. So with your personal savings, there's a couple of different goals that I like to work through with clients. So one is having a rainy day fund. So that could be if something just really bad goes wrong, right? We have funds set aside. So that could be 6 months worth of personal expenses. Sometimes I have clients that'll do a year. If you know, like, hey, I'm gonna go off for a couple of years. I'm just gonna do whatever, right? And then we know that we're saving towards that goal. We might set aside a little bit more savings there. Okay. Other things to consider here are going to be things like, are you saving towards a goal? Are you saving towards purchasing a home? Because that amount is separate from that 6 to 12 month rainy day fund, right? We want to set aside additional money for the home. Same with a vehicle, if you're saving for a vehicle. If you have, a home that maybe is older and needs a lot more repairs, maybe you have what we call a sinking fund for repairs. So maybe like my home is just going to require a little bit more maintenance, or I really want to update my house. So maybe you save towards that update. That's going to be in addition to that 6 to 12 month security blanket that you have, okay? I also haven't touched on retirement, right? So retirement is also a really important factor when it comes to saving. You want to make sure that you have money set aside for retirement. So I'm going to give you a percentage for savings, and that is a very general rule. It's not set in stone though, and you may want to put aside more money than what I'm about to tell you, okay? You may have enough money and you don't need to put aside that much, okay? So some of the things that you want to think about is, do you have a rainy day fund? Can you survive 6 to 12 months at least in the event that something bad happens, right? So in the event that you have some sort of catastrophe, in the event that your business goes under, do you have enough money for 6 to 12 months worth of expenses? Okay, one thing to consider. Do you have any large item or project or something like that that you need to save up for? For example, are you saving for a down payment for a house? Does your house need remodeled? Do you know, like, my car's doing well, it's not going to do well soon. I'm going to need to set aside a fund for that vehicle. Okay. If you have certain amounts that you want to put aside monthly into these different savings accounts, take that into account and see if the percentage that I'm going to give you is more or less than what you're planning on putting aside. If the percentage I'm going to give you is less, then increase this amount for savings. Okay. Increase this amount for savings. If the amount I'm going to give you is more, you might want to consider setting aside more into savings. The other thing that you want to take into account is retirement. Okay. So when it comes to retirement, that's a whole separate conversation I'm not going to go into, just because we're working on reverse engineering your profit, not necessarily what you need to set aside personally for savings. Yes, it's part of the conversation, but that's a big conversation to have. So when it comes to retirement, you also want to make sure that you're putting money aside for retirement. Sorry if you can hear my cats in the background. So the percentage that I'm going to give you is not set in stone, right? I'm just going to give you kind of a general rule. So general rule for your savings is going to be 20% of what you bring home goes into your savings account. So what that means is if your personal monthly expenses are $10,000, we're going to put $2,500 in the savings account every month, okay? So now the amount that you now have to take out of your business is $12,500. not $10,000. So if your personal monthly expenses are like $10,000 and you want to put 20% into savings, you're going to divide this number by 4, because this should make up 80% and this should make up 20. Okay? So you're going to divide your personal monthly expenses by 4 to get the amount that you want to put into savings. So if a personal monthly expenses is $10,000, you would put $2,500 a month into savings. So you would need to be able to pull $12,500 from your business. We're not accounting for taxes right now. That comes later. Okay? So you would need to be able to pull $12,500 from your business. If your personal monthly expenses are $8,000, your savings would be $2,000. The total you would need to be able to pull is $10,000. Okay? So go ahead and do a quick calculation on savings. If you have a separate amount that is more than that, please feel free to include that. Okay? Please feel free to use that amount instead. We will eventually have a whole entire unit on personal savings. Right now, we're going to go with the 20% rule. That's going to change. But that's a whole separate conversation. For simplicity's sake, we're going to do 20%. I want you to at least put something aside for now before we calculate what that something is. Okay? So again, we're going to do 20% gets pushed into savings. So if we're assuming your personal monthly expenses are going to be 80%, the amount you calculated in the last video, that's my cats again, the amount that you calculated in the last video, you're going to divide that by 4, and that's going to be your savings amount. Okay? So go ahead and do that. And then for the next video, you should have your personal monthly expense budget amount and your savings amount. Okay? That's what you need to move on to the next video. If you don't have your personal monthly expense account, go ahead and rewatch the prior video and work through that worksheet. Okay? All right, I'll see you guys in the next video.